so many elements of spellcraft to this deception with the 8" per mile squared, to do with relativity, to do with using trigonometry, and using a circle, which in 3D is a column. So I'm going to try and unpick some of the elements of this. I'm also going to show you a video which will hopefully clarify this somewhat. What I've got here is a 30 centimeter ruler placed on a 55 centimeter diameter exercise ball. It's not fully inflated, so it's not perfectly spherical, and it may not be the full 55 centimeters as advertised. However, you can see on this ball here, the ruler is at the 15 centimeter point, is touching the ball for about 2 centimeters, possibly a little bit more. But if we say it's about 2 centimeters, 2 centimeters of the 55 is around about 4%. 4% of the diameter of our Earth is 320 miles. So when we do the pencil line on the drawing, we're actually creating a vast flat spot. Ask this motorcyclist if he finds any flat spots on this journey. Yeah, and you see him making allowance there for the lower part, less curvature. That's the first thing, is that, there aren't on a sphere, on a ball, on the outside of the ball or the inside of the ball, there's never a flat spot. We can't be promoting the idea of flat spots. I don't see how that's at all in accordance with the model that's offered. And then whenever I say this to a globe believer, they say, "Oh no, it's not a perfect sphere," and that's the straw man designed to kind of throw me away from. No, we're talking about essentially a sphere. They look at the circles that have been painted by NASA artists, and they like Rob Simmons, and they so no, that's not even real. They try and row away from even that, So we got to be certain that what they're saying is that we live on a oblate or sphere, and there is this constant curvature. It's not possible to afford ourselves flat spots because it suits the trigonometry. Now, this is where some of the issues come for me with this trigonometry issue. In the globe model, there's no up and down. So we allow them that when we use this model. We say, from the starting point, the amount of drop that the person will experience is relative to this starting line, this flat spot, this 300 kilometer, and it's 300 miles just there. So anyway, the height drop from here to here is worked out by using the various methods, and it is used fundamentally by taking it to a center point in the middle of the ball. What do you reckon? Flat spots? Yeah? Where's the flat spot? Tell him that he's going flat where he stops, and then it starts to curve. Choose a point, any point you like. At what point is that flat? At what point is there less curvature than the following meter? One of the things that we don't have to consider when we're using the trigonometry is that there was curvature all the way up to the point at which we then zeroed the curvature and said, no, now it's zero. Whereas, of course, the motorcyclist will tell you, he's curving now, still curving and still curving. There isn't a point of flatness. You can't, you can't do that on this Wheel of Death ride, which I had to video like this because I couldn't download it. I don't have the correct type of account for that. So this is always turning, and so there's a curvature in the moment before and during, and then after. There's always curvature to afford a moment of flatness. Is relativity. is to say I happen to be at this point. But again, you could say, well, what if you were here? Does that mean that there's more curvature back where you were back there? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm creating, oh no, there's no curvature here now. But when I put my ruler like that, then of course the curvature is back again. There's this, but it's not curvature. It's now they do talk about height drop. Now, height drop, when there is no up and down, there is no relative height lost. You see, because everyone will insist that they're standing on the top of this ball. And the only way for that then us to do the formula is not actually to measure the height drop from here. It's actually just to rotate the ball underneath the ruler, because it's that's apparently happening. Is that the observer is always on the top. It's that the ball is rolling underneath them. So why don't we account for that in the way that we formulate this? That it's actually got nothing to do with this 300-mile straight line. It has to do with a point at which someone is standing, around which everything is curving all of the time in every direction, no matter the size of the ball. You see this, and there's another lie that is perpetuated by flat earthers, is that because of scale, because of size of the Earth, there isn't going to be that obvious amount of curvature. Someone was in one of the cities on tour last week. Someone was saying, imagine you're the ant. You can't imagine you're the ant because you're not, an ant, and you're not living on a globe. So you can't realize this for yourself, So what they've done is they've either given you a 300-mile flat spot on the top of this and said, we'll measure the drop by the time you get over here, and oh, by the way, by the time you get to the sort of this point, you're actually falling off the side. You're actually just dropping down at an incredible amount per mile traveled over the skin, which of course is stupid, because once I get to this journey point, I say, well, no, look, I'm going back up the hill, and it's going to start with a very small amount of curvature. And of course it can't be. That's why globies reject this 8 inches per mile squared, because some of them can see what you can't see, and that is that you can't do that. You can't say I'm curving, and this idea that you're dropping down when nobody wants to accept there's a down, in the globe community, that there is no down. So how can you be falling down when down is not a construct for them? It's that the ball is always rolling to have the observer at the top of the ball. So really what we come back to is then how much is the ball rolling? And when you roll a ball over a tennis court or any other flat surface, that ball is not going to have points at which it's flat. It's not going to do that. And I accept, obviously, the weight of the ball or the weight of this ruler may indent this plastic ball, but that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a water ball that can, hold itself in almost perfect sphericity in a vacuum. And so it's not affected by the weight of my ruler standing on it. It is meant to be the ship doesn't dent the ocean, perceptibly. Obviously, there's buoyancy and displacement, but it's not going to, create a flat spot. It's going to be a flat boat, of course, on the flat water, but waves will ripple up the side depending on the conditions. But in this pseudo reality, we're letting them off the hook by saying, well, we'll do it like this, because you see, there's a thing that we're not really cognizant of when we do that, and that is that. What are you actually measuring? See, are you really measuring this with their clever trigonometry? Or are you actually measuring this circle with their trigonometry? Because that's all you got on a piece of paper, is you've got that. And when you're measuring that, that's the equator. And actually, there is no height loss on the equator. If you allowed it for me to live on a globe like they tell me I do, yes, I have a small, almost perfect example of a globe. These green and blue bits mean everything. This is science. If you lived on this thing and you had an equator, which is here, and you were able to traverse the equator like this, yeah, you would really lose no height in the way that we are trying to tell people they're losing height. You lose no height. I mean, I accept that there is still a radius or a diameter through to the other side, China or whatever, but you're not actually losing the height that we all think about when you're going this way to this way. So where's the the drop gone in this formula, which is really what I think that we're doing when we're going around like this in the trigonometry. I am trying to stimulate thinking, because an observer cannot shape reality. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this to the flat earth community. You cannot, do not allow your mind to be caught in that trap. The observer doesn't shape physical reality. I cannot stand in front of a mountain and manifest a change in the mountain's size. That it does not happen. We know perspective says that it will get smaller as I remove myself further from it. I will see further as I go higher, but I'm not shaping that reality. I'm simply looking further into the room because I've got more illumination, more elevation. I'm just looking further into the room, but the room is not being altered by the observer. That's bullshit science. I accept that my energy can affect a room. I accept that I can give plants energy by my in that way I can shape so-called reality, but not the physical elements of this reality we're in. I can't bend spoons, and we cannot make flat spots where we want to go. We cannot say, oh well, I'm standing here now, it's 8 inches. Now I'm standing here, now it's 8 inches. Now I'm standing here, now it's 8 inches. But when I'm not, then this is thousands of feet, because we've been tricked into saying, well, look how much you've got to kind of go down. So we're measuring this sort of down, this sort of start point height, and then how much height am I losing, and that in this context does become more rapid as you take, go around the outside of the clock. It does, each second hand does fall more downwards, but it's not falling as, the 12 o'clock position to the next second is a more lateral movement. But when you turn the clock, if I turn the whole clock by 90 degrees, then that 12 o'clock position now will move a whole lot down rather than more laterally around that position, yeah? But every movement is exactly the same. Every sweep of the second hand is going to be exactly the same. You don't get to zero it. So I think the drop, height thing is Flat Earth Society psyop. And I'm sorry that so many of my friends are caught up in it. But, there's a lot of ego involved here in Flat Earth, a lot of ego. And ego is the same for the Flat Earther as it is for the Glober. I got something, I got a knowledge, and I'm not letting it go. And obviously we're talking about a non-real construct, and we're having to use balls and 300-mile flat spots and an assumed drop of, in a downward position for which there is no apparent downward position. Like I said, it's the ball that's meant to roll underneath the ruler, the individual observer, not the other way around, because they'll never take, the globies will never take themselves. They'll never say, okay, my ship's going from here to here, it's going to here, and then it's going to go back up again. They can never do that. And this methodology of trigonometry is allowing that, but they won't accept that this curvature here was thousands of feet in the last mile, or hundreds, at least many hundreds of feet in the last mile. But they will never say, well, now my return journey has to start from here and I have to go back up. And it starts from, well, the first mile has to be thousands of feet of climb, but when I get to the final, when I get back to my, England, here I am, 8 inches in that last mile. Isn't that fantastic? No, because we would tell them, well, no, you've got to start from zero again here. And your last mile, oh my God, you're going to drop thousands of feet. And after 1,000 miles, we can't calculate it. It's not very accurate. That means the formula is fucked up. Boys, wake the fuck up. How can you say, I've got a formula that's accurate for the first 100, 500 miles, but after that, I don't know, it doesn't work. Well, then that's because it's wrong. So what is it? What's it going to be? Is it the wheel of death? See that? Even she knows. Where the cyclist is experience exactly the same amount of force, exactly the same amount of curvature. He's not losing height, but he's got curvature on the drum. And the same rule applies for someone who was riding on the outside of the drum, if that were possible, without him flying off, which is obviously what would happen unless you gave the drum God gravity. But still, it's still going to have the same amount of curvature. There's curvature before the moment you're looking at, and there's curvature after the moment you're looking at. You don't get to have this 300-mile, 400-mile flat spot and say, well, it's kind of, but by the time it's here, it's dropping a whole lot more. And like I said, no Globie will ever admit they need to come back up. Because for them, once again, the globe simply gets rolled so that they're back on top. You see? So that no problem. Every journey can start with that 8 inches. That's why, I think that's why flatties love this so much. But I don't know, that's why globies don't, because they're smart enough to realize that there cannot be 8 inches of curvature in this mile, but 300 inches of curvature in this mile and 3,000 inches of curvature in this mile. When they live on a perfect oblate spheroid, it must be bending at the same amount.